The cache restored itself at 2:13 in the morning. That's the part people get stuck on when I tell this story. Not the hidden apartment, not the erased timeline, not the fact that someone spent almost a year carefully reconstructing a cleaner version of their life while the old one was still happening in real time. No, they get stuck on the folder. Because deleting something feels permanent to most people. But deletion online is usually just silence, and silence has a way of waiting. In backup folders, in archived thumbnails, in metadata nobody remembered existed, waiting for the one person obsessive enough to notice the shape of what's missing. I became that person accidentally. The folder appeared while I was standing alone in the kitchen making coffee before sunrise. Recovered items synced successfully. One folder, 7 gigabytes. No custom name, only a timestamp. 2024, 11/18, and the date hit me immediately, because November 18th was the exact week she started acting careful around me. Not distant, careful. There's a difference. Distance is emotional. Carefulness is strategic. People falling out of love slowly disappear. People hiding something become precise. Their words become edited. Their affection becomes scheduled. Their reactions arrive half a second too late. And once you notice that rhythm change, you can never fully unsee it again. 10 minutes later, she walked into the kitchen wearing my hoodie and pretending to answer emails. Soft smile, relaxed posture, perfect breathing. Then she asked, "Did your computer update last night?" Not, "You're awake early." Not, "Why do you look stressed?" Just that. Technical, specific, prepared. And suddenly that recovered folder stopped feeling accidental. Have you ever had someone ask a question that quietly confirmed they already knew something they shouldn't? Because that was the moment the atmosphere changed for me. I told her no. She nodded once, too quickly, then changed the subject before I could study her face. That bothered me more than panic would have. Panic is human. Control means rehearsal. I opened the folder after she left. Inside were fragments, not messages, not photos, fragments. Metadata exports, auto-saved thumbnails, temporary sync logs, location remnants, pieces of a digital life someone had tried very carefully to erase. And buried inside corrupted cache files was something strange. A hotel invoice from 8 months earlier. Same city where she claimed she was attending a branding conference. Same weekend she suddenly stopped answering calls after midnight. But the reservation wasn't under her name. It belonged to a consulting agency I'd never heard of before. No website, no public presence, no real history except one dissolved filing buried deep in public archives. And the only name connected to it was her brother's. That's when the story stopped feeling emotional and started feeling engineered. Most people think digital investigations begin by looking for deleted things. That's wrong. You start by mapping what should exist. Because real relationships leave fingerprints everywhere. 7 years together creates a predictable digital texture. Old comments, embarrassing photos, chaotic captions, tagged restaurants, random reposts at 2 a.m., messy history, real history. And when I mapped the expected shape of our relationship against what actually existed online, I found a gap so clean it almost looked surgical. 5 missing years, not hidden, removed. The deeper I dug, the stranger the rhythm became. Her old posts before 2023 felt human, irregular, messy, sometimes warm, sometimes distracted. Then suddenly everything changed. The captions became cleaner, the emotional tone flattened, the replies became uniformly polished. Even the grammar improved too consistently. That's the thing people misunderstand about performance. Perfect consistency is unnatural. Real humans fluctuate. Data exposes that. I compared archived snapshots from older platforms. The behavioral shift happened around late 2022. Not a personality change, a management change. Like someone suddenly became aware their entire life needed to become professionally survivable. And then I found something worse than cheating: coordination. Her search history cleared itself every 11 days, exactly 11. Not random deletion, maintenance. Then another anomaly surfaced. Her typing cadence changed around one recurring deleted contact. Shorter messages, faster replies, less punctuation. Emotionally neutral language. Cold, efficient. Like two people managing operations instead of having conversations. 342 interactions over 6 months, mostly between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. mostly while she was lying beside me pretending to sleep. And the language analysis flagged the tone as performative neutrality, not romantic, operational. That phrase stayed with me for days. Because betrayal hurts, but coordination changes the entire architecture of trust. The breakthrough came from something almost stupidly small, a food delivery receipt, wrong address, 2:41 a.m., 2 meals, one of them peanut noodles. She was severely allergic. I stared at that receipt for nearly 10 minutes, because suddenly every deleted file mattered less than one realization. The food wasn't for her, which meant the apartment probably wasn't hers either. I traced the lease records, corporate short-term rental, 6 months, paid through the same consulting agency, and connected to the apartment was a media contractor whose digital footprint kept appearing around her content for over a year. Podcast appearances, background reflections in deleted stories, private event photography. Then I remembered meeting him, twice, once at a launch event, once inside our apartment. She introduced him as, "He's just helping with production." At the time it sounded normal. Then I remembered the questions he asked me. Not personal questions, technical ones. How often do you archive footage? What backup systems do you use? Cloud or local? At the time it sounded like industry small talk. Now it sounded like reconnaissance. I almost stopped digging after that. Honestly, I should have. Because the deeper I went, the less this resembled a relationship collapsing, and the more it resembled narrative replacement. Old photographs disappeared first, then captions changed, then old mutuals quietly unfollowed archived accounts, then interviews started subtly rewriting timelines. Tiny edits, different dates, adjusted wording. One interview implied we met in 2023. We had lived together since 2021. Another referred to me as someone she briefly worked with. That line physically made me pause the video, because suddenly I realized something horrifying. She wasn't deleting me emotionally, she was deleting continuity, not through one giant lie, through thousands of tiny revisions until the original story became socially unreachable. Have you ever realized someone emotionally left your life months before they physically walked out of it? Because that realization changes every memory retroactively. The final confirmation came from silence. Every Thursday between 9 p.m. and midnight, her phone disconnected from our home Wi-Fi. Consistently. For 7 months. Most people never notice absence patterns, but absence leaves structure too. So I cross-referenced those hours against archived public appearances. Most Thursdays matched brand meetings. Except one. No event, no tags, no activity, nothing. But the hidden apartment network showed a device spike that same night, including her phone, and mine. At first I thought it was a logging error. Then I remembered. Months earlier she borrowed my old tablet during a live stream issue. The device authenticated against that apartment network once, and continued storing residual sync traces afterward. That was the mistake she missed. Not the affair, the ecosystem. Because digital systems remember contact long after humans try to erase context. And suddenly, everything became horribly clear. She wasn't trying to hide cheating, she was trying to erase overlap. The relationship had become incompatible with the version of herself she intended to become next. That realization was colder than heartbreak. Heartbreak is emotional. This felt administrative. I never confronted her. People expect screaming, evidence thrown across tables, emotional speeches. But psychologically intelligent manipulation rarely ends loudly. It ends quietly. I spent the next week pretending everything was normal. And honestly, that was the hardest part. Watching someone continue ordinary routines after realizing they had emotionally exited the relationship months earlier. She still sent grocery lists, still reminded me about meetings, still corrected my pronunciation gently while cooking, and somehow that normality became terrifying. Because once performance becomes habitual, sincerity and imitation start sounding identical. Then one night she laughed beside me while editing a campaign video. A real laugh, uncontrolled, natural. And for one devastating second, I realized I hadn't heard that version of her around me in almost a year. That moment hurt more than every recovered file combined. I left 3 weeks later before sunrise. No confrontation, no revenge, just absence. By afternoon she called twice, then stopped. No emotional paragraphs, no confusion. At 11:08 p.m. one final message arrived. I think you accessed things that weren't meant to survive. Not, please come back. Not, we should talk. Just that. cold, precise, like someone acknowledging a containment failure. I read the message 4 times, then archived it beside everything else. Because by then, I understood the real truth. People rarely fear emotional exposure. They fear pattern exposure. Anyone can deny one accusation. Very few people can explain hundreds of coordinated inconsistencies spread across years of digital residue. And the terrifying part wasn't the betrayal. It was how normal everything looked while it was happening. Sometimes people ask whether I regret recovering the archive. I don't, because the deeper truth wasn't that she cheated. It was that she spent almost a year constructing a cleaner narrative while I was still emotionally living inside the older version. And maybe that's what modern deception really is. Not lies, edits, tiny revisions, careful omissions. Until one day, you realize the person beside you has already rewritten the story, while you were still trying to live inside it. If you noticed the first real red flag before I did, tell me which moment gave it away. And have you ever looked at someone's perfectly curated life online and felt something underneath it didn't feel real? Because sometimes the silence starts long before the ending does.